The lights in the White House press briefing room were blinding, cameras flashing as Karoline Leavitt, the sharp and unrelenting press secretary under President Donald Trump, stepped up to the podium. She adjusted the microphone, her face a mask of composed determination. The murmurs among reporters fell into a hush as she took a slow breath and spoke into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press," she began, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "What I am about to reveal will send shockwaves through Washington and beyond. It is a matter of national integrity, government transparency, and, most importantly, truth." The journalists in the room exchanged puzzled glances. Karoline was known for her straightforward style, but this sounded different. This wasn't a routine press briefing. This was something else, something big. The room's tension thickened as Karoline held up a thick dossier, stamped, classified, in bold red ink. She took a moment, flipping through a few pages before looking up. "For years, Representative Ilhan Omar has presented herself as a champion of democracy and justice," she continued. "But the American people deserve to know the truth. Tonight, we reveal the details of a cover-up that could change the course of her career, perhaps even end it." Gasps erupted from the press pool. The cameras zoomed in, reporters frantically jotting notes as Karoline paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle over the room. Behind her, the large screen flickered to life, displaying a series of documents, some with blacked-out portions, others with seals from government agencies. The words "foreign influence operations," "financial irregularities," and "deception" stood out in bold. Over the past year, an internal investigation has uncovered shocking evidence connecting Representative Ilhan Omar to foreign entities that have sought to influence American policy in ways that benefit their own interests, not ours, Karoline declared. "And let me be clear, this isn't speculation. This is hard, indisputable evidence." A collective murmur rose from the reporters, and one stood up. "Ms. Leavitt, are you saying Representative Omar has been working against the interests of the United States?" Karoline locked eyes with the reporter. "I am saying that there is a trail of financial transactions, confidential communications, and political maneuvering that raise serious concerns about where her true allegiances lie." She clicked a button on the podium, and the screen shifted to an email exchange, heavily redacted but still revealing enough. It showed correspondence between Omar's senior staff and a shadowy foreign organization, with discussions of policy adjustments and strategic support. Another reporter shot up. "Are you suggesting treason?" Karoline didn't flinch. "I am suggesting that Representative Omar has serious questions to answer. The American people have a right to know whether their elected officials are truly representing them or someone else." The room exploded into chaos. Reporters shouted over one another, desperate for more details. Some seemed shocked, others skeptical, but all were hanging on to Karoline's every word. And then, with perfect timing, she delivered the final blow of the night. "We have submitted this evidence to the Department of Justice," she announced. "A formal investigation is now underway." The press room was in an uproar. Some journalists rushed to make calls, others typed furiously on their laptops. But Karoline knew this was just the beginning, because what they had revealed tonight was only the tip of the iceberg. The aftermath of the press conference was nothing short of explosive. Within hours, every major news outlet in America was dissecting Karoline Leavitt's revelations. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, each had panels of experts arguing over the implications. Was this the downfall of Ilhan Omar? Was this just political theater? Or was the White House truly sitting on the biggest scandal of the decade? Ilhan Omar, usually active on social media, had gone silent. No tweets, no public statements. Her office scrambled to control the damage, but the weight of the allegations was overwhelming. Inside the White House Situation Room, Karoline Leavitt sat across from President Donald Trump, who watched Fox News on the giant screen with his arms crossed. Beside him sat Stephen Miller and other key members of his administration. The room had an air of both triumph and tension. "Well, Karoline," Trump said, finally breaking the silence, "you really set the media on fire." He grinned. "Great work. But I want more. The people deserve to know everything." Karoline nodded. "We have more, Mr. President. A lot more." She tapped a file in front of her and looked around the room. We've been tracking suspicious financial transactions linked to Representative Omar for months. It appears that she has received large sums of money funneled through a network of NGOs, some of which have direct connections to foreign governments that are hostile to American interests. Stephen Miller leaned forward. Are we talking about campaign finance violations? Karoline's expression darkened. Much worse. She pressed a button on the conference table, and a screen flickered to life, displaying a complex flowchart of bank transfers, offshore accounts, and suspicious donations. Follow the money, she said, pointing to a highlighted section. This organization, registered as a nonprofit, has been funneling money into Omar's campaign under the guise of grassroots contributions. But in reality, the funds originate from a foreign entity that operates under diplomatic cover. Trump's eyes narrowed. Which foreign entity? Karoline hesitated for a moment before answering. A Middle Eastern intelligence agency with a vested interest in shaping U.S. foreign policy. A heavy silence fell over the room. Jesus, someone muttered. Trump, never one to back down from a fight, leaned back in his chair and smirked. Well, looks like the Democrats have a real problem on their hands. He turned to Karoline. How solid is this? Rock solid, she assured him. We have bank records, intercepted communications, and, most importantly, a whistleblower who was involved in processing these transactions. Trump clapped his hands together. Then we take this to the next level. Karoline nodded. Already in motion. The DOJ is preparing subpoenas, and the House Oversight Committee is getting involved. Trump grinned. I love it. Let's keep the pressure on. The storm begins. Meanwhile, across Washington, Ilhan Omar's team was in full crisis mode. Inside a dimly lit conference room at her D.C. office, her closest advisors and legal team huddled around a long table, scrolling through reports, media clips, and internal memos. This is a coordinated attack, her chief of staff, Rahim Patel, said, slamming his fist on the table. We need to get ahead of this narrative. Omar sat at the head of the table, her fingers steepled under her chin. She had faced controversies before, but this was different. This time, they had evidence, real evidence. And if they controlled the money trail, she was in serious trouble. Her communications director, a young strategist named Leah Cohen, spoke up. We have to frame this as a racist, Islamophobic smear campaign. That's our best defense. Omar finally spoke. We need time. Delay the DOJ inquiry, challenge the subpoenas, do whatever it takes. But we have to keep this from snowballing. Patel nodded. We can rally progressive allies in the media to discredit the claims. Call it deepfake documents or an election year stunt. Omar clenched her jaw. And what about the whistleblower? Who is it? Silence. Then Patel spoke hesitantly. We don't know. Yet. Omar exhaled sharply. Find out. But deep down, she knew this was going to be the fight of her career. And if she lost, it wouldn't just be her political future at stake. The storm was just beginning. As the controversy around Ilhan Omar escalated, Washington was gripped with anticipation. The Department of Justice had formally launched its inquiry and subpoenas had been issued. But the biggest bombshell was yet to come because Karoline Leavitt had something even more powerful than documents and financial trails. She had a whistleblower. The White House planned a follow-up press conference scheduled to take place in just 48 hours. But behind closed doors, Karoline and her team were working tirelessly to ensure that the next revelation would leave no room for doubt. Inside a secure, undisclosed location, Karoline met with a middle-aged man wearing a dark suit. His hands trembled as he took a sip from his coffee. He looked exhausted, the weight of his decision visible in his weary eyes. Are you sure you want to do this? Karoline asked, her tone softer than usual. The man who had requested anonymity until the moment of the press conference nodded. I've kept this secret for too long. The American people deserve to know. He took a deep breath and continued. I was a financial consultant for an international nonprofit that was on paper dedicated to humanitarian aid. But behind the scenes, we were moving money for political purposes. I started noticing irregularities when large sums were funneled to campaigns through a network of small-dollar donors who didn't actually exist. At first, I thought it was a simple accounting error, but when I raised concerns, I was shut down immediately. Karoline leaned forward. And that money ended up with Ilhan Omar's campaign? Yes, the man confirmed. And not just her campaign. Some of it was directed to PACs that supported her policies that directly benefited foreign entities. I have emails, financial reports, and transaction records proving it. Karoline exhaled. This was it. This was the final nail in Omar's political coffin. Are you prepared for the blowback? She asked. The whistleblower hesitated but then nodded. It doesn't matter anymore. What matters is the truth. Karoline placed a reassuring hand on his arm. You're doing the right thing. We'll protect you. She stood up, gathering her notes. In 48 hours, the world will know everything. The calm before the storm. Ilhan Omar's camp was in chaos. She had hoped to ride out the storm with media spin and political maneuvering, but the pressure was mounting. Donors were backing away, her allies in Congress were growing silent, and rumors of a whistleblower had sent panic through her inner circle. Sitting in her office, Omar scrolled through her phone, reading article after article about the scandal. Then, a new headline flashed across the screen. Whistleblower to testify against Ilhan Omar, evidence of foreign financial ties confirmed. Her stomach sank. She immediately dialed her attorney. We need to stop this. Her lawyer, Mark Ellison, sighed. It's too late. If they have a whistleblower, the DOJ will move forward. The best we can do is fight this in court, but politically, he hesitated. Omar gritted her teeth. Politically, what? Ellison sighed again. Politically, your career might not survive this. She slammed the phone down, her hands trembling with rage. For the first time in her career, she felt something she had never experienced before. Fear. The day of the whistleblower testimony arrived and Washington was at a standstill. The entire nation was glued to their screens as Karoline Leavitt took the podium once again, her signature composed demeanor unshaken by the firestorm surrounding her revelations. Behind her, seated at a long wooden table in the White House press room, was the man who had decided to risk everything, Daniel Whitman, a former financial consultant with direct knowledge of the foreign money flowing into Ilhan Omar's campaign. Good evening, Karoline began, her voice firm and unwavering. As promised, today we present evidence that will expose the depth of corruption and foreign influence infiltrating our government. Mr. Whitman has come forward at great personal risk to provide the truth to the American people. She gestured to Daniel, who cleared his throat nervously before speaking into the microphone. For years, I worked for an international nonprofit that I believed was focused on humanitarian aid, he began. But as time went on, I realized that it was being used as a front to funnel foreign money into American political campaigns. One of the largest recipients of these funds was Representative Ilhan Omar. Gasps echoed across the room as reporters frantically typed on their laptops. The story had been building for days, but hearing it firsthand sent chills through the audience. Daniel continued, my job was to ensure that these transactions appeared legitimate. Fake donors were created and funds were funneled through small-dollar contributions to avoid detection. But the real source of the money? A foreign government with vested interests in shifting U.S. policy in their favor. Karoline took over. And we have proof. She clicked a button and the screen behind her displayed a trove of emails and financial records. The documents showed direct links between Omar's campaign and a complex web of shell organizations that traced back to a foreign intelligence agency. One particular email caught everyone's attention. Ensure that the adjustments to policy are reflected in upcoming votes. The funding will continue as long as progress is made. The sender? An operative tied to the foreign government in question. Ladies and gentlemen, Karoline said, pausing for dramatic effect. What we are looking at is not just an ethics violation. It is a national security threat. The press room erupted. A reporter from the New York Times shot up. Ms. Leavitt, are you calling this an act of espionage? Karoline met his gaze without hesitation. I am saying that Ilhan Omar has engaged in activities that warrant the most serious legal and ethical scrutiny. The American people deserve representatives who work for them, not foreign interests. Another reporter from CNN yelled, has the DOJ responded? Karoline nodded. The Department of Justice is reviewing the evidence and criminal charges may be forthcoming. The room exploded again. This was no longer just a political scandal, this was potentially criminal. But Karoline wasn't finished. She clicked again and another email appeared. This one was from Omar's campaign, instructing staff to cover up certain financial discrepancies. This is an active cover-up, Karoline declared. And it ends today. Across town, in her congressional office, Ilhan Omar watched the press conference in stunned silence. Around her, aides frantically made calls, legal advisors whispered among themselves, and staffers exchanged nervous glances. Her phone rang. It was a senior Democratic leader. Omar, we can't protect you from this. She swallowed hard. This is a setup. Maybe, the voice on the other end said. But the evidence is damning. And if the DOJ moves forward with charges, the party will distance itself. You need to step down. Omar's grip tightened on the phone. I am not resigning. The line went dead. She slammed the phone onto her desk, breathing heavily. This couldn't be happening. But as she stared at the TV screen, watching Karoline Leavitt deliver the final words of the press conference, she realized something horrifying. This wasn't just a political battle. This was survival. And she was losing. The fallout from the whistleblower testimony was immediate and catastrophic. The Department of Justice announced an official investigation, subpoenas were being served, and Ilhan Omar's political allies began distancing themselves. News networks ran round-the-clock coverage, dissecting every email, every financial transaction, and every potential legal consequence. Fox News, Ilhan Omar's days in Congress are numbered. CNN, breaking, DOJ confirms investigation into foreign financial ties in U.S. politics. MSNBC, what did Omar know and when did she know it? Meanwhile, inside the White House, Karoline Leavitt watched it all unfold. She had done her job and she had done it well. The DOJ moves in. Within 72 hours, the Department of Justice issued formal charges of wire fraud, campaign finance violations, and conspiracy to commit election fraud against Ilhan Omar. Attorney General Josh Hawley held a press conference. The American people deserve elected officials who serve their interests, not the interests of foreign governments, he declared. No one is above the law. Then came the arrest warrant. Federal agents arrived at Ilhan Omar's congressional office and the cameras were already rolling. Omar, dressed in a dark blazer, walked out in handcuffs as her staff looked on in shock. The photo of her arrest, Omar being escorted by federal agents, became the most viral image in America. The headlines were brutal. Ilhan Omar indicted, facing up to 20 years in prison, The Washington Post. Foreign influence in Congress, how Omar betrayed America, The Wall Street Journal. The biggest political scandal of the decade, The New York Post. Her fall was complete. Karoline Leavitt's victory lap. Karoline Leavitt, now America's most powerful press secretary, held her final press conference on the matter. The truth always wins, she told the world. The Biden-Obama era of corruption is over. The American people demanded accountability, and they got it. A reporter asked, Ms. Leavitt, do you think this will lead to more investigations into campaign corruption? Karoline smiled. Let's just say we're not done yet. The room erupted with questions. As she walked off stage, Karoline knew one thing, this was just the beginning. The aftermath. Ilhan Omar resigned from Congress in disgrace. She was convicted of wire fraud and sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Karoline Leavitt became a national hero and a rising star in American politics. Donald Trump declared victory over the swamp. And in the end, the American people saw justice served.